Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So you know I buy and sell guitars from time to time, and this is one that I picked up recently, and sometimes I just buy something that I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's probably not a great practice, but I was positive this was a real Gibson. I just didn't know the specifics of the model. So if you look at this thing, the reason that I was confused is that it's got two humbuckers, but it's got a stop bar style bridge and only 3 knobs. And it doesn't have any sort of model designation on the headstock. It just says Gibson, has the right truss rod cover, the right tuners. It's got these Gibson Deluxe tuners, so that's a little bit of a hint. It's a 2013, and the reason I talk about those tuners being special is that in 2013, 2012, 2014, somewhere in there, Gibson started using those Gibson Deluxe tuners on some of their models. This is just kind of a nitrocellulose light finish, kind of one of their worn series. I think it's a worn cherry. All of these things added up. Like, it didn't really amount to any model that I was aware of. But I did a little bit of research online, and I figured out that this is a Guitar Center exclusive model, and that's why I really wasn't familiar with it. And this one is a Les Paul Special. The guy that I bought it from was calling it a Les Paul Junior, and I kept trying to tell him it's definitely not a Junior because it has 2 pickups. If it was a Junior, I would expect to see some different bridge and knob configurations anyway. And I couldn't pin it down to a Special because, well, it's got humbuckers for one thing. Some Specials do have humbuckers, but you see a lot of them with P90s. Anyway, so this is a Les Paul Special. It's a Guitar Center exclusive. I think they didn't use this 3-knob configuration for very many guitars, so it's somewhat limited to not necessarily this model, but maybe this time frame. It's not unique on the back. It's got the setup for 4 knobs, or the 4-knob sized cavity. So they didn't make too many changes with regard to that knob setup. So, mystery solved. I've just got to do a little bit of cleanup on this one to get it back into fighting shape. The main thing I want to address on this one is well, there are 2 things really. There's a cosmetic issue. The finish is very cloudy, and there's a lot of sweat marks right through here. Also, the switch is not oriented in the right direction, so I'm just going to take that switch cover off, turn that thing. Also want to check out the pots, make sure nothing's scratchy, and I might check intonation. These bridges are famous for not being able to fully intonate correctly, but there are some minor adjustments you can make on the back of these bridge posts, so we'll probably take care of that too. Well, on a nitro finish, especially a thin one like this, there aren't a lot of solvents that you can use that are safe. One solvent that's fairly standard for use on nitro finishes is lighter fluid. Now, you can get a traditional lighter fluid like this, or you can just use good old naphtha. And naphtha is basically lighter fluid. They changed the formulation of lighter fluid in recent years, so it's not exactly the same as it used to be. But naphtha is a nice, safe alternative that comes in higher quantities for a better price. Let me see if I can get these sweat marks off the bow here. One thing about naphtha and lighter fluid, they both evaporate extremely quickly, so that's a good thing. There we go, starting to come off now. Well, that has helped quite a bit, and I don't know if something was spilled on here. That looks like maybe could have been a beer or something, but it spilled on here at some point and made some droplets. There's a couple of more areas back in here. I got most of the sweat off of this area where your arm sits. There are some weird marks, maybe from a guitar stand or something. I'll have to spend a little bit more time on that later. All right, let's do a little investigative work, and I'm going to take this back plate off. Alright, I've hooked up an ohm meter, and I just want to check out the pickup readings because I've heard that there's a weird configuration in this guitar, which is a 490R in the neck position and a 491T in the bridge position. So let's check out the resistance on the supposed 490R, 7.7K, and what about the 491? Alright, 8.1K. A little hotter than normal, and something I would expect to see. Alright, before we button this up completely, let me see if the pots make any weird sounds. A little bit of scratchiness in both volume pots. Let's go ahead and drop a little bit of deoxit in there, try to take care of that. You probably wonder why I'm not spraying deoxit. I just don't like spraying anything that has solvents in it on a nitro finish. So I'm using D100 deoxit and a small brush to drop it in. It's just this little tiny bottle, and this stuff goes a long way. All right, let's see if we can clear up that scratchiness. All right, it's already gone, so we're good. Go ahead and give this tone control a little bit of a workout too. But everything's shaping up nicely. Okay, well I can button up this back plate now that I'm sure that every one of my controls back there is in good shape. And let's move on to the switch area so that I can straighten out this switch. I prefer that my switches go straight up and down. I think this one's moved a little bit. Yeah, it most certainly has, so I'm just going to get this one clocked back and tightened down. There are definitely better tools for this than a pair of pliers, but as long as you use a pair of pliers that has deep grooves to get into this ring and you don't slip, this has always turned out fine for me. All right, that takes care of that problem. Let's button this thing up as well. So here's a closer up view of the back of the headstock. You can see the Gibson Deluxe tuners here, which are really similar to the Gibson Deluxe tuners. In fact, they may be identical, but these do have the nice little white knobs on there for a little bit of a change. So one thing that I wanted to point out on the back of the headstock here is you can see that Gibson started messing around with serial numbers back in the mid-2010s. And this is a longer serial number than you'll see on some of the earlier guitars. And it still retains the year that's mixed around with the date code. So it's a YDDDY format to the code. The year are actually the first and the fifth numbers. So you can see the 1-3 here. And then the day of manufacture is from 1 to 365 or 366 depending on the year. But you can see that that is number 23 in the case of this. So this is an early 2013 build. Something else to note about this is that Gibson normally serialized the guitars with 3 digits. This one has 4. So 3 of those numbers are the serialization number of the guitar. And there's an extra code in there that's an internal code that frankly I don't understand. Now there's one other thing you'll notice about the back of this guitar in terms of dates, and you'll see the 2013 date there next to the Made in USA logo. And the reason Gibson started doing that is because they actually started messing around with the dates in the serial numbers, and they switched from using the first and fifth digits for the year to the first and second digits for the year. At that point I stopped paying attention to what they did to the numbers after that. That was the time period when they actually started putting the date code next to the Made in USA stamp because they caused so much confusion, and I think they caused so much confusion that they ultimately just went back to their old standard by around 2018, 2019. So just an interesting time period for Gibson, and it's one that confuses quite a bit of collectors. Okay, well I just want to see how off the intonation on this bridge is. So let me get this thing tuned up. All right, let's start with this low E. This harmonic is fairly well tuned already because I tuned the string. So let's see about the 12th fret. Sharp. So bridge needs to move back some. Let me see about the A string. Sharp, slightly sharp, sharp, sharp. Okay, well every note on there is sharp, so the way to fix that would be to detune all the strings, tighten these little lock screws. They're actually made to push this bridge back some on the posts, but you tighten these little adjustment screws here. That makes the bridge move back. I've got probably at least 1/8 of an inch of adjustment left on these screws, so I'm sure it'll be fine. It'll be interesting to see how close I can get to making them all intonate, because there are no fine adjustments on here. It's just one straight line across. I'll do that off camera. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me on this episode. I always love it when you guys hit like and comment on my videos, and I really love it when you guys hit that subscribe button, so be sure to do that, and I'll see you all next time.